Good evening, everybody, and lovely to see so many of you here tonight. I'm Nataraja Wise, I'm Chief Executive of the Royal Television Society, and I'd like to welcome you to our 2025 TV Predictions event. Last year's edition, pretty much like this one, was a sellout and sparked lots and lots of lively discussion. So we thought we'd bring it back again this year, and with a new and equally illustrious panel. So I personally can't wait to hear all the big calls they'll be making about the year ahead. For those of you that have questions, we've got a QR code on the screen, and we're also streaming live to a few of our centres as well. So they'll also be using the same technique, QR code, so that our chair can pick up on some of those questions and put them to the panel. But before I hand to our excellent chair, BBC News' culture and media editor, Katie Razzall, we have a little treat for you. Ahead of tonight's panel, we asked some familiar faces from last year's panel to reflect on their predictions. Just something for tonight's panel to bear in mind. Roll the VT.
So was I right in my predictions for 24? I think I was mainly in the right ballpark. The first thing that I said was that I thought there'd be a continued decline in the middle of the market, and we've definitely seen that, particularly in factual. And the BVOD commissioners are looking increasingly for those big shows that really punch through and matter to the audience.
I said that a large tech company would buy one of the prominent programming groups. Larry Ellison, who owns Oracle, is buying Paramount. Yes, his Nepo baby son is technically buying them, but let's all be honest. So check.
Yeah, I think one of my predictions for the year was that budgets would be tight and it would be hard to make ends meet. But actually that just hasn't come true. And we found all the budgets to be really generous, which has meant that we've been able to pay freelancers really well, take all the time we need to make quality work and just have a really relaxed time. So I think the budgetary pressures didn't actually come through in the end.
This time last year on the panel, I was a bit of a stato, and I talked about expecting around 3% growth in the UK TV advertising market. As we head towards the final 2 or 3 weeks of the year, we're probably tracking around 2.5%. So if you round that up, that's not too far away as an accurate prediction. So a modest year of growth for the UK broadcasters in an election year, and helped no end by a bumper Euros for ITV.
Another prediction that I made was that commissioning editors would tighten their pointless and needless control over the experts, and that actually just didn't happen at all. So over this year we didn't have any interfering phone calls from commissioning editors who look about 12 years old, and we really felt that we had the creative space to deliver the quality work that we needed to do.
The other prediction that I made, which didn't need to be Mystic Meg to make it, was that audiences in the UK love British content. And so we've seen the success of Slow Horses, we've seen the success of One Day, SAS Rogue Heroes coming back. So British storytelling for British audiences is increasingly important, and that's not going to go away.
And lastly, I said that younger audiences will not age into liking broadcast TV like they develop a taste for coffee. I also said that broadcasters, if they didn't adapt soon, were at risk of losing the 3 youngest generations in the UK forever. Recently, I put out a report with Barb based on total video viewing in the home in the UK. And what we showed is that now, for all television and video viewers in the UK, social video and streaming are now as large as broadcast. But for consumers under the age of 34, 80% of their consumption of video in the home is now a combination of social video, which is the largest chunk, and streaming, with broadcast getting just under 14% of total video viewing in the home. So I think check.
Ash Atala, what a pro. I don't quite know how he kept a straight face there, but anyway, everyone else was laughing. I'm Katie Razzall. It's great to be here with, as Teresa said, this illustrious panel. In my day job at BBC News and also as presenter on the media show, I do often get asked for my predictions. I am absolutely delighted that I'm going to be asking them for theirs, and I don't have to say anything apart from a few questions. But there is, of course, a great deal to talk about. 2024 certainly wasn't quiet. Whether that's the year of elections across the globe, most pertinently for us here, and of course in the US. We've got a new government, so have they. On a happier note, we've seen the Euros, the Olympics, and of course in terms of the media, a great deal of change, whether that's in the advertising space, Amazon Prime Video, joining the likes of Netflix there. We've seen more streamers pivoting to live, Netflix broadcasting its first live NFL games on Christmas Day to great success. Lots of speculation about takeovers and mergers, not least at ITV. Lots of economic uncertainty and difficulty for broadcasters, production companies and advertisers. And of course, lots of new tech advancements as ever, which will bring both challenges and solutions. So today is the chance to hear from these key figures in the industry who will have a look at their crystal balls and predict the future. And I'm going to ask them first just to introduce themselves. Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Bird and I'm the Managing Director of Prime Video in the UK.
Hi, I'm Amelia Brown. I'm the CEO of Fremantle UK.
Hi, I'm Josh Krichefski. I'm the CEO of GroupM across the EMEA region.
Hello, I'm Kiran Nataraja. I'm the Director of Streaming and Content Strategy at Channel 4.
Evening everyone, I'm Kate Phillips, Director of Unscripted Commissioning at the BBC.
See, when you get people to introduce themselves, they're very modest and they just say their titles. But obviously, they are not just those titles, but also important players, clearly, from those titles. I think the way we're going to do this, and anybody who came last year, it was possibly similar, is we're going to divide this up and then take questions at the end for about 15 minutes. So there's various sort of key areas that we're going to look at. Economics, key for everybody here. What we'll consume in this coming year, how we'll consume it, and then that buzzword, people might be bored of it. I certainly am, but hey ho, I can't be bored of it. AI, and how it's going to be used this year or not. And no doubt along the way, other issues will come up. But if we start with economics, everybody knows 2024 was tough for everybody. Perhaps not for the streamers, many of whom grew. A key part of that was around advertising. So if we start with advertising, how is 2025 looking? And perhaps, Josh, you're the best person to kick that off in terms of the ad market and how it would apply certainly to people here in the room in the UK.
Okay, hi everybody. I hope I'm the best person to talk about that, because I'm definitely not the best person to talk about content or anything creative that all of you lot are very good at. So I'd say overall the ad market is quite buoyant right now, actually. And last year it was as well. So last year, the ad market overall grew 8% year on year versus the previous year. This year, I would expect it to be about 7%. So I think that is good, positive news. In terms of sectors, so the automotive sector, who are obviously, it's obviously a big advertising sector, is still struggling with production following COVID, and also certain regulations around having to invest a certain amount of money behind EV electric vehicles. So they will, I think that will be down still, advertising for automotive will be down. On a more positive note, retail is bouncing back very well from 2023, where they were really struggling with the cost of living crisis, and that's looking a lot more positive. So a big bounce back from retail. What else? Utilities are up as well. Okay, so that's where I'd say most of the growth is coming from. As a general trend, there's real short-termism in the market. So advertisers not wanting to look too far in advance, they want to see a return on their investments. And so as a result of that, the real engines for growth are the digital players, so paid search, Google, social with Meta, TikTok. 75% of digital advertising was covered really by Google, Meta, TikTok, Microsoft and Amazon last year. But also we're seeing growth from streaming and other digital extensions like digital out-of-home advertising. Broadcast is a bit more circumspect, which probably doesn't surprise all of you. So last year we saw another consecutive year of decline in terms of weekly reach, and broadcast viewing was down So the previous year it was down 12% year on year. Last year it was down 6% year on year. So it's a slowing of decline, which is a good thing. But I'd say probably but that's also been across most demographics. I think the starkest figure is below 50% of 16 to 24-year-olds in an average week would have tuned into broadcast TV. So I think that going into this year, we'll probably see a decline of broadcast of about 3%, but stemming that, we'll see an increase of streaming and BVOD of about 20%, which will leave TV as a whole probably growing somewhere between 2 and 3%, probably closer to the 2, I would say.
So Amelia, for you, running on from that, how do you read that and how do you see the economy for your business right now?
I think we're very much still, as you said, 2024, let's not do that one again, but 2025, there's lots of optimism. However, we're still in that the middle ground, the changing, the budget's changing, everything, costs going up, people wanting more for less, etc. So for us, it's about a big readjustment to how we can make the content that we make, but find a happy balance between the content that is expensive, the content that is what everyone's watching as well on the likes of YouTube that's made for a lot less money, and trying to be clever, readjust, etc. So we can sort of follow the market, follow the fact that the desire and the want and the need for the content's still there. I think it's how we approach it and how we tackle how we make it is where all of our, as content makers, that's where all our effort is going into.
And that phrase "survive till 25" that people were talking about, obviously you've survived, but is there a sense of when it will be better than just survive in 2025? Is it this quarter? Is it next quarter? Yeah, when?
Oh gosh, I mean, you mentioned the crystal ball. That would be really handy if we had one of those. But I think from my point of view, I think the process of adjustment is going to continue throughout this year. There's money coming from different places, there's viewers coming from different places, there's viewers spreading around, and then again there's partners, there's brands, it's more about the old business model doesn't really exist anymore, and we're just heading away towards multiple new business models, I think. So I think, you say survive to 25, yeah, of course, the likes of Fremantle did, we're lucky, we're big, we've got a lot of brands and IP and stuff, but we are also fundamentally built on a very old business model. So there's a lot of adjustment that has to come from even the bigger players to make sure that we can all move forward. So I would say 2025 for me is still going to be another year of adjustment, but with a bit more positivity, knowing that actually we've all just got to be a little bit more flexible and less rigid in how we have done things in the past.
And Chris, how do you see it? You've obviously launched ads, I think it was February, wasn't it, that you did that? How do you see that as part helping to grow the business? Where do you see it panning out this year?
Yeah, definitely very multifaceted. I think it's really important for the UK to have a really healthy ad-funded television market, and I think there is a lot of optimism. I was talking to Josh earlier. I know he's optimistic about this year. We thought at Amazon, long and hard about how to deploy advertising within the Prime Video service. Years of research went into our launch in February of last year, and we wanted to do 3 things. We wanted to ensure, one, we adequately commercialized our business, because in doing so enables us to keep costs low for customers, enables us to invest more in content and commission more content and develop more content for our customer base. And 3, to enable us to build relationships with ad partners that we knew we needed to have an ongoing and healthy business. Obviously, the Prime Video service is part of a much bigger retail service within Amazon. So from an ads perspective, advertisers are very, very keen to work with services that can actually retail content and products. As we go forward, we'll only be investing further in being able to target customers better, commercialize our opportunity better, and ultimately give the end user a better experience. Since we launched in February last year, we've been really, really pleased with the level of customer feedback we've had. We've had, expect any customers to thank you for adding advertising into their programming, but we've had a really positive response to the way customers have managed the low-level ads, the high targetability of the ads, and the relevance of the ads.
But in terms of commissioning content, I mean, you're one of the ones that we need to splash the cash in order for, production companies to survive.
Absolutely.
In 25 and
yeah,
further
absolutely.
on. Are you?
I think our commissioning budgets are really healthy and strong. There's certainly been no decline in what we've been spending in the UK. And, as we go forward, a greater share of our investment at the global level is centred here in the UK. We're making probably the biggest TV show in the world here in the UK right now.
And that is Rings of Power?
Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm. How's that going?
Season 2 launched last year. It was, again, on par with Season 1 in terms of its global reach, the most successful and wide-reaching show we have. Literally creating thousands of jobs here in the UK in terms of production. And we hope it continues on for many more seasons in the UK.
And Kiran, from Channel 4's perspective, what's your sense of 2025 and what the priorities are? We know Channel 4's had a difficult and torrid time in the recent times.
Yes, it's certainly 2023 and 2024 were incredibly difficult times for Channel 4 and obviously the wider industry. We're really aware of how difficult it was for a number of people in the room, production companies, freelancers. A very, very difficult time. I think for 25, I feel cautiously optimistic. I think, as Josh was saying, in terms of where broadcast is, in terms of an advertising perspective, we're seeing it's plateaued, but the key thing that we're focusing on at Channel 4 is this shift from linear revenues to digital revenues. So you'll be familiar, hopefully, with our fast forward strategy, which we announced last year, which is really prioritising that digital growth. And as Josh said, that's where the growth is. And essentially, because of our model, we're not for profit. All the money that we make, with a majority of it, we try to ring fence and put into content. But yes, the nature of market forces and the nature of our model means that we are more exposed to those ebbs and flows of the ad market. So yes, a priority for us is making sure that we are prioritising our content decisions to mean we're focused on streaming, and also really trying to ensure we're spending as much on content as possible.
But you have been making less,
We have been making less. We have been, we had record content investment in 2020-21 because of the pandemic. But obviously, the stark difference that we saw was you were going from post-pandemic boom to the worst ad market recession in 15 years. And so that difference in the ad market and the direct impact on our content budget really meant that it was tough in terms of the content decisions we were making.
Is the trajectory up for 2025?
We're spending more on content in 25 than we did in 24, and we are looking to go on that trajectory. Again, one of the things that we did in the past year that you'll be aware of is, we unfortunately had to make content budget cuts originally, but we've also streamlined our business. So part of the fast forward strategy is making sure that our business is future facing, but that actually means as a business we can then invest more money in content. So as I say, our priority is making sure we can spend as much money as possible on content, but yes, you're completely right, our content budgets aren't back to the post-pandemic boom, but we're looking at the sort of 2019 levels.
And Kate Phillips, lay it out from the BBC's perspective, or from your perspective inside the BBC, in terms of how you see 2025.
Well, I mean, like we all said, it has been challenging, and we have had a sort of flat licence fee for the past couple of years, which is tough when we're seeing super inflation. And I think production costs have gone up a lot as well, which we're very mindful of. And like Kiran said, we've been very transparent. We have been commissioning less hours. Having said that, I am cautiously optimistic as well, because I think we've got a huge wide variety of genres at the BBC. We're still the biggest broadcaster in terms of commissioning independent programming in the UK. We work with more indies, independent producers, than anyone else in the UK, and all our genres are very much open for business and commissioning. So I'm very conscious that, like there's a lot of people in this room have had a really tough time, and we really want to support indies across the UK and commission as much great content as we can going forward.
And yet that, of course, hasn't been possible. There's been lots of talk over the last year, obviously, about the independent sector, how many companies can survive.
Yeah.
How do you perceive it in terms of the BBC's role? And I'd ask Channel 4 that too, but how you perceive it in terms of a public service broadcaster and your role in trying to keep that ecosystem
Well, really, I think all of us, all public service broadcasts in the UK, it's really important. And, we are very committed to, we know that we want indies, when we commission shows, indies keep their IP, and that's so important as well. We're not commissioning people as work for hire. They in the large majority of cases, they keep their IP unless it's an international format, but most of our stuff is origination. So it's really important we support indies, and out of London as well. And I was talking to Rob Unsworth, our head of daytime, over 80% of the programmes we commission in London in our daytime are now made out of London. And it's a public service broadcaster, it's audience first, it's always the audience at the heart of everything we do, because they own us and they pay for us, but it's also about supporting the ecosystem in this country and making sure that the indies are supported, and we're commissioning as much good stuff as we can from as wide variety as indies as we can.
And Amelia, just paint a picture, because clearly we have seen some big production companies disappear in the past year. We've seen mergers. What's your perspective on that, your area, that area, and what's going to happen?
I think we'll see some more consolidation. I do. It's obviously last year there was a lot of it. Everyone was doing it. I think it would be naive to say it's not going to continue on small levels and big levels. I think again it comes from what everyone said. It comes from the back of a sort of booming situation where we're in a readjustment period. So we need to we're all reassessing how that programming gets made and how we feed. It's a market that is, again, as I said before, that where the viewers are different, etc. So the readjustment means that I think consolidation will continue, and I think everyone from that will get smarter in how we make programs and how we make that content. The good news is content is still everywhere, and everyone still wants the content, and people are still paying for the content, so that's exciting. So I'm always like, great, we're on the right side. We're all right. But yeah, it sounds pretty sort of simple, but when you're in an adjustment period, that's what has to happen. Unfortunately, we've gone from shows that would have huge amounts of people making them, because they would start small, they'd get more, the teams would get bigger, the money got bigger. We were able to. Did the program change? I'm not sure they did. I think fundamentally the programs probably inherently stayed the same. And now we are in a world where you're like, actually, those teams do need to come smaller. We do need to be clever on how we're, getting from A to B, from the budget to the program. And
I thought Doctor Who was aiming to be like Star Wars, isn't that what they said? Yeah. In terms of that kind of money. But I mean, you were talking, Chris, about spending money on expensive shows. Was there more of a cachet before about we're going to spend big, whether it's The Crown for Netflix or your shows? We spend all this money. Are you being more careful now?
I'd certainly say careful, yeah. There's a finite amount of money to invest wherever you are. So, our business thinks both locally and globally, and there's parameters and prerogatives to achieve content at the local level as well as at the global level. We make shows like Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power here in the UK because the tax credits are very favourable, the talent pool that we have to be able to make those shows is very favourable, and the infrastructure we have here in the UK is very, very strong. That injects a ton of money to the economy, and we make global TV shows as a result of it. Those shows will probably disproportionately work well in the UK because of the nature of them, but their remit and their ambition is to perform globally. Local shows, Clarkson's Farm, for example, we make really specifically for British audiences, and we want to ensure that they are the best shows for British audiences they can be, watched up and down the country and loved by, ideally, millions of people. So that's not changing for us.
Okay, who do you perceive to be your biggest rival? Is it Amazon Prime or is it perhaps YouTube? I don't know.
No, I don't. I think a few years ago, yes, you would have looked at the streamers because there was a rapid growth in streamers, obviously, and the success of them. I think now, for me, it's YouTube, it's TikTok, it's gaming, it's all those other platforms. As I said at the beginning in the video, for us, it's really important that we appeal to everyone across the UK, but we want to grow, the love of the BBC with the young, and they are becoming very distracted by all these other platforms. It's like, come on, look, and it's making them aware of the things we've got sometimes, because I think a good show is a good show on any platform, but it's just trying to get them to come to those shows and get them off their devices and get them off YouTube.
Yeah, in fact, I'll have a little plug for the media show, because today we talked to Patricia Hidalgo, your colleague who runs children's programming.
Sure, she said the same.
Yes, exactly. And she was accused by Jake Cantor from Deadline of losing the battle already on persuading children.
Oh God!
BBC YouTube.
We're absolutely not losing the battle. I think actually, BBC sort of grew its market share over the past year, and actually we're seeing really good numbers in terms of our iPlayer growth as well, and we're the fastest growing streaming service in the UK, and more people come to the BBC than the other SVODs combined. So in that sense, broadly, I think it's really healthy for us and for other public service broadcasters. I think we're all doing a really good job, but I don't say we're losing the battle with the young, because I think the young, we can see really good young share on some of our big shows, but we just need to make them more aware of what we're doing. And shared viewing is important. I think a show like Traitors at the moment, we do see the 3 Gs. I always talk about the 3 generations. If we can have a show where parents, grandparents and kids can watch it together, that's terrific. And that's what me and all my commissioning teams look at when we're looking at those shows that bring audiences together.
And clearly, we're going to talk about what we'll consume, and clearly we've all gone on a journey in terms of how you schedule programs. But before we do, just Josh, a last word from you on a bit of hope. Ads will continue to pay the bills for a while, is the message I'm getting from you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we can talk more about where, as we're seeing lots of growth in streaming and BVOD, that attracts a hell of a lot of advertising, and it does something for TV that it's never really done before, that digital has always done, which is addressability. So, we can talk about that later or now, but I think that will create lots of opportunities in the future, as do I think AI as well, because I think they're linked from a media buying perspective. That's going to create opportunities to make more money in TV this year and moving forward as well. I did want to just make one point on that last conversation around YouTube and around. I mean, I do think that, and this might be an unpopular thing to say, but I think I don't disagree with what you were saying, but I do think that there are things to be learnt from what people are doing on TikTok.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with that.
I don't think that. I think broadcast has always been brilliant at shared cultural experiences, but I think that people are on YouTube and TikTok the content is very niche, it's very interest-led, and it's very global. And I think we have to be quite experimental here to compete. And again, I think that will monetize content as well, in a way that I think we could be doing more.
Well, let's talk about experimenting then when it comes to what we're going to consume in the next year and further forward. There are accusations perhaps the PSBs might play it safe. Questions around where experimentation will come from, and I think I used to work for Channel 4 News. We always thought, and indeed we were, mischievous, experimental, all the things that we felt we were that sort of plucky, mischievous ones. In terms of Channel 4, Kiran, is experimentation when it comes to your content and what we're going to consume, is that part of your strategy? How are you going to continue to experiment?
Yeah, taking risks and experimentation is a really big part of what we want to be doing at Channel 4. It's what we're here to do, to be innovative, to be different. I mean, it is interesting looking at the types of shows that are being commissioned at the moment, because everyone's focused on their streaming strategies. There's a lot of focus on reality and premium factual and scripted. So there have been conversations about whether, you know, the content landscape is getting quite homogenous and, you know, there's people aren't taking risks. And, you know, being really honest, from a Channel 4 perspective, we are a commercial broadcaster, but we've got PSB values. So for us and our content decisions, there's always that balancing act about making sure we get big, broad shows that audiences want to watch, and then also looking at what's innovative and different. And actually the sweet spot is when you find something that feels noisy and distinctive, but is also getting big audiences in through the door.
What would that be for Channel 4?
Well, for example, coming up, we've got a show that I was just chatting to Kate about, actually, called Go Back to Where You Came From, which has got a very provocative title. It's based on an Australian format. It's looking at the really sort of knotty conversation and discussion around immigration and asylum seekers. You know, when it was pitched, we thought, oh, this is very provocative, but it's incredibly timely. Look at all the conversations that are going on. We take 6 Brits on a journey. They're recreating those migrant journeys, you know, starting in conflict zones, and you see their reactions to the experiences of immigrants. And actually, you do see a change in people's behaviour. Actually, it was originally an Australian format, and the show had so much impact in Australia that it actually became part of the school curriculum for quite some time, because it changed people's views about immigration. And, you know, there has been some criticism about whether the title is too provocative, but we want people...
Channel 4 has a history of that.
History of that. And it's about bringing difficult subjects to broad audiences and challenging people's thinking.
And what about, from your perspective, Kate, the BBC playing it safe? I mean, would you have said The Traitors was experimental TV? Is Gladiators, the reboot of Gladiators, experimental TV? Do you see experimental TV as important?
I mean, I think for us, yeah, because you know, because we're not commercially driven, so we absolutely take risks. And I think every commission, and you all know this, every commission is a bit of a gamble. It's a bit of a punt. We're not quite sure how, you know, even if we've all been involved in shows we've absolutely loved but haven't found an audience. So you can do all the audience research you want, you can go, but you still don't know if it's going to land. Traitors have been on in Holland, hadn't done sort of stellar ratings. Again, it was a bit of a punt. There was something different about it. I didn't know how it was going to take off. I can't sit here going, I knew you were going to love it. I didn't know Claudia's styling was going to go through the roof. You know, you don't know this when you commission these shows. And you know, something like Gladiators, I mean, again, I got quite a hard time when we brought back Gladiators, because it was like, really, you're going to do that old show? And people weren't convinced. But Hungry Bear...
Ian Katz called it microwaving or something.
Yeah, yes, that was right, Edinburgh. But it's, yes, and about reheating formats and things. But actually, the Indie did a lot of development on it, on how we would bring it back and, you know, sort of tweaking it and new games. And yeah, there was a lot of skepticism, but for me, it was about what do our audience want? And people who watched it sort of 20 years ago are now parents themselves. And again, it was a show that I thought could bring people together. But whether it's an international format that we develop for UK audiences, a reboot, and I have to say on the reboots, only 1% of our programming Unscripted is reboots. After 3,000 hours, it's about 1%. It's very small. But, you know, that's still a risk. And so is a paper pitch format, like I Kissed a Boy and then I Kissed a Girl. You know, that was a paper pitch format that became a new show. So everything is a risk, everything is a punt, but we stand with the indie and we sort of jump in together holding hands and hope for the best. That's how it works.
And Chris, do you see a difference between what will work or win on streaming platforms and what works on more traditional public service broadcasters? Is there a difference, or are you just looking out for shows that you think are great?
Well, I think we both have different remits, right? There's a very, very clear PSB remit, and you know the PSBs do that phenomenally well. Last year, shows like Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, I don't think any streamer would have ever done that, but it's crucial and important to the UK that PSBs make that.
Just explain why. Why would no streamer have taken it?
I think
British, or
you know, I think it's hard to commercialise those shows internationally.
But because they're British, or because they're worthy, or because
because they're too British.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But I think the the very best British content is the stuff that everybody wants, like scripted dramas, high concept shows, you know, and whilst streamers may be in some ways competing on those shows, I think we're also cooperating on them. So, for example, with the BBC at the moment, we're co-producing Night Manager seasons 2 and 3. BBC will have it in the UK, Amazon will have that internationally. I think that helps increase the level of budget so that it becomes a bigger show, and there's some symbiosis and some synergy there. So I feel like that's an opportunity, not necessarily a threat or a challenge in the market, and hopefully we can do more of those.
And Amelia, what will consume? Do you, from your side, do you see, when you're talking to a public service broadcaster about what you're offering, are they playing it too safe? Are they listening? Has the way it's evolved made it harder for you?
I don't think I don't think anyone's playing it too safe. I think there's probably, I think maybe our industry's lost its gut a little bit in terms of like everyone just going for what they sort of truly believe in across the board. But I think there's still elements of that. I think to Kate's point, everything is a risk. I think if you look at every single big hit over the last 10, 15, 20 years, there's not a single person who knew that was going to be a hit. That's what happens. I think as producers and developers, we also are guilty because what happens is there's something that's a hit, and then we all, as opposed to again going with our gut and coming up with things that are new and exciting, we tend to also play it safe. We can then follow suit. Like,
what, try and repeat the hit with a similar thing?
Yeah, well, Traitors is a great example. Traitors, probably, you know, we know that Traitors got pushed around a few places, and then the BBC were the ones who went, right, we're going to do it. No one knew it was going to, you know, to the thing, but someone took, you know, the gut instinct was actually there's something new in that. What then followed, I imagine, was every broadcaster being pitched, probably, and we're guilty of it, versions of what we're now calling psychological reality, like, you know,
not
versions
of it.
Not a
cloaks.
Not a cloaks, yeah, exactly.
Have you commissioned any more cloaks?
Yeah, no more cloaks, yeah.
No.
And that's less on, I think it's probably less on the buyers and more on the developers and us to actually go, no, come on, derivative versions of everything is never going to be the next thing that hits big. It never has done, it never will be. So there's a combination of everybody trusting their gut and going with an instinct of creativity, I think.
And do you see reboots like The Gladiator, do you see that as derivative, or actually are you thinking this reaches new audiences, it's not a rehash?
I mean, bearing in mind the joy of the Fremantle catalogue, I love it. I'm all happy for a reboot. No, I think there's a new audience, and I think if it's done well, I think they're done well, then I think there are classics that are brilliant for a reason, and if the timing's right and if the creativity around it is good enough and different enough, then yes, I think give it a go. But again, there's a gut to it, there's a belief, there's like, actually, hang on a minute. But I think the new audience is key. There is the oldest person of Gen Z now is 25, 26, I think, and they think totally differently, they behave totally differently, they don't do anything the way any of us in this room, sorry, anyone who's under 26, do. Like, it's like that's, and so we're feeding that, we need to feed that audience, and it's like, and we sort of go, okay, well, maybe they're not going to like this. It's like, I don't know, we all liked it when we were, 26, maybe they will if we...
We thought talking was actually talking, and it turns out talking is just communicating on WhatsApp or Snap or whatever. That's what my kids tell me anyway. They're always telling me they're talking to people. They're definitely not talking to people. They're just sending them messages.
Give things time to grow.
Yes.
I mean, because often, in this sort of immediate sort of judgment, and of course it's not about the overnights now, it's about the consolidated, and we live over 28 days. But I remember, going back, we'll stop talking about Traitors, but at one, I think when we first launched was about 2.5 million, and it didn't really do much the first few eps, but then it's sort of snowballing, and on this series at one is now over 10 million, because it's half of it is linear, but the other half is iPlayer, and that's another huge. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about this digital, but it's. I don't understand this sort of still obsession with overnights, because at the BBC we wouldn't make any decisions till we see it. I'm sure the same as Channel 4, the 28 days. And in some countries, I know my friends who work in SVT in Sweden, they don't even look at overnights anymore. They're all about the sort of story and the consolidated of the digital platforms being key.
And I know we've got to move on to how we'll consume content, but just quickly, you talked about Mr. Batesby, the Post Office. It was a surprise hit, I'd say. Anyone got any predictions of the surprise hits of 2025? What are we looking out for? What am I supposed to be putting my bid in to do an interview on? This is what I'm using this
I'd say
event for.
we're bringing chess to the television. So
Chess.
yeah, so the BBC is putting chess on the TV. I don't think it is niche.
There you go.
Second biggest game in the
come
world,
on.
isn't it?
Chess,
or
and
something?
I'm a chess Luddite. I'm a complete thicko when it comes to chess. But I went to the run-through with Dan McGolpin, who's our head of sort of Channels 9 player, and he loves chess and I don't, and we both loved it. And I don't know if it'll work, but Curve did a really good pitch. They put in a run-through, and so I don't want to say it will be because it's so hard to know what's going to be a hit, but I absolutely stand by it, and I'm really pleased with doing it because it feels fresh and innovative and different. So for me, chess on the BBC, watch this space.
You heard it first here. Come on. Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to how we're going to consume. And there's always predictions about how there's going to be major change about how we consume things, and maybe there aren't. But, Kiran, if we start with you, are we going to see changes, do you think, in how people consume TV? And has Channel 4 changed your scheduling approach, for example?
Yes, I mean, we've seen a lot of changes over the past few years, just as we've seen that migration from linear to digital, and it's constantly evolving. We can't sort of sit still and think, you know, this is how it's done, it's one rule fits all. And it's really interesting. The really, really cheering thing is that, you know, as we've said on the panel, people are watching a lot of TV. It's just about making sure that we serve audiences in the way they want to consume TV, be that on a linear scheduled 9 o'clock slot, or if they want to watch something slightly time delayed, or, you know, binge it as a box set. So one of the things we've been looking at Channel 4 is those genre differences. Different genres work differently on different platforms. Scripted tends to work particularly well as a box set. But again, that's not a broad brushstroke. Within drama, for example, you may choose to not box set a particular show. The key thing that we think about is we want shows that people are talking about, and it's about creating those event moments. And it's not necessarily when people talk about watching something live, it's not necessarily at that sort of 9 o'clock slot. It's about watching it close to the time that programme is dropped, because it's those amazing water cooler moments. I mean, I was, again, talking to Kate about my Traitors obsession. You know, the office is dominated by everyone saying, oh my God, did you see what Linda did? You know, it's that you want those talked about moments. So in that instance, you wouldn't necessarily box set something like Traitors, or in a Channel 4 example, something that we have a lot of chatter about is Married at First Sight. And, you know, we get a lot of people saying, why don't you just drop the box set or even batch release them across the week to allow people to watch on streaming? But actually the joy of TV is that people can watch it and talk about it at the same time.
Which is why you've cunningly, with Traitors, you know, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, build that audience.
Yeah, and I love maths. You know, I'm a massive fan of maths. It's, yeah, you want to keep it back. You want people wanting more. You want to give them a dopamine hit and then say you've got to wait a bit now. And yeah.
And it's interesting because what we're also looking at is that relationship between linear and streaming, and how we potentially change our linear scheduling to help to just be more complementary in a streaming world. So you'll probably notice that it's quite unusual for shows, single eps, to be stripped across to play weekly across 6 to 8 weeks. We now do strips across a week. So, for example, at Channel 4 we have premium factual box sets. So say, for example, a 4-part crime piece. In the past, that would have played over 4 weeks, but we schedule it Sunday to Wednesday, for example, because what you're doing...
Does that work?
It works well because you're creating a mini event in the linear schedule, and as I've mentioned with our model, linear is incredibly important. So you maintain those linear viewers, but you're also creating an instant box set for our streaming viewers. So you're actually getting the best of both worlds. So we're doing very sort of smart release strategies across linear and streaming.
And Amelia, what have you noticed about how scheduling is working right now? At one point we thought it was just linear in terms of that was just going to all go out the window and put everything straight out on demand. That's obviously now not happening in that straightforward way.
No, and it ranges as well. And I think the key point to Kiran's point, it is humans inherently want to be a part of something, and that's what we're still creating. We all want to be a part of a conversation. Like we are drawn towards it, and we are lucky enough to be the people behind starting those conversations. So it's how you stretch that out to gather as many people to that tribe, whatever that tribe wants to belong to at that time. So, but there's a big mix. There's a mix even with the streamers of, you know, every time that if you're talking about a show, it's like you have the open conversation. Are we gonna drop it all at once? I don't know. It depends on the show. Does it warrant that the story needs to be played out much longer because we need to, you know, again gather the tribe. We need to tease the tension. It's, you know, there's different examples, and and shows could be different. And again, I think that's playing to the many different elements of audiences there are. So it's continually changing, you know. So but those conversations are had with each, whether it's a streamer or whether it's a PSB. They're the same conversations. It's like, shall we batch it? Shall we drop it in, you know, stages of 2? Should we do the whole lot? I think that's exciting, because I think it's what the programme is then lent into the conversation of how it gets played out.
And Chris, at Amazon, I mean, just talk about, we know fast channels are growing, for example. Is that bringing back live viewing to a new audience? And just talk about your experimentation in that area.
Sure. I mean, just on the last point around scheduling, I would say generally offering customers choice and convenience is a really good thing when it comes to programming. But when you want to create appointment to view television, then there's a real cultural moment around that. Like, you know, the whole of the country stopped on Christmas Day at 9 p.m. to watch Gavin and Stacey finale, and those things
Except
are
me.
Were you on the telly?
No, I wasn't. I don't know what happened. Anyway.
So those are like real, you know, important moments. You know, important for advertisers to be associated around those, and important for us to create, you know, collective experiences. So I think, you know, streamers are doing much more of that now, us especially. In terms of fast channels, we've definitely been experimenting in that area for a number of years. Amelia's kindly given us the Baywatch channel, which is every episode of Baywatch, one after the other. You can plow through. But I think the idea of, you know, moving into channels that are curated. So if you have a particular interest or area of you know, consumption that you want to watch, cooking shows in the afternoon, comedy shows in the evening, you don't have to go through the hassle of actually choosing on an on-demand basis every episode, then they can be very convenient.
And Josh, you were talking about addressability earlier, trying to work out what ads would be targeted at someone watching Baywatch. But anyway, maybe we won't go into that. But just what does it mean for streamers, for broadcast, for everybody, if this, you know, is addressability growing? How's it working?
Yeah, addressability is...
Maybe explain what it is. Maybe everyone in the room knows.
So yeah, addressability basically means being able to target audiences in a very kind of tailored way. So being able to serve tailored creative to audiences because you know a lot about those specific audiences. So it almost doesn't come across as a one-to-one, but it's very relevant. The communications that's been sent to you are very relevant. And addressable is growing significantly, both in terms of viewing, but in terms of advertisers doubling down on it. And if I mean, this is going to be oversimplifying it, but digital online media has grown at the expense of TV and publishing because it's addressable, basically. And
is it good for consumers or content?
Yes, it should be, because you're not going to get advertising that's irrelevant to you. You're going to get stuff that you
it might be worse for your pocket because you're going to spend more.
Well, depends which way you look at it.
It's definitely worse for your pocket.
But the benefits of it for advertisers is that it enables them to their advertising is going to be more effective for them, and it's going to it's going to deliver a return on investment, so they'll spend more money, which is beneficial to broadcasters and streamers because it means that they'll get more money coming in. I feel quite bullish about now and in the future the increase in addressability being really good for TV, honestly.
And we are about to take questions, but I do just want to quickly end on AI. And Josh, I think you're a good person to ask or to explain your view what AI can do.
All right, I'm not going to talk about creativity. But I think, and I'm trying not to be too techie, but hopefully you find what I'm about to say interesting. But the way that advertisers have done addressability with companies like Meta in the past has been around IDs. So matching their IDs with Meta's IDs in a privacy-safe way to be able to make sure that they're delivering targeted advertising, right? AI, my company, we are all in on AI and not on IDs. So we're saying, actually, we can build models within an advertiser's data set, and then they can use what their learnings on those models with ITV or with a publisher. And so I'll give you an example to sort of bring it to life. Boots, right? Boots want to sell expensive shampoos. They can look at their Advantage card data and go, right, we can predict what will make someone buy, what are the predictors for people who are going to buy expensive shampoos. They can then provide that information to ITV, and then they can look at ITV's, all of their advertising inventory and work out which program is going to be the best for them and deliver the best value for them. And then they can actually, in the future, will be doing more auction-based impression level buying, and they'll be able to identify programming that they might be willing to spend more money on because it's more valuable to them than another advertiser. So instead of buying centre breaks and paying a premium that anyone would pay, it means that advertisers are smarter about what they buy and more money goes into the TV ecosystem. And actually, TV companies will be able to sell inventory that they might struggle to sell before, but that's actually quite valuable inventory to Boots. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Amelia, I've spent years in rooms with creatives bemoaning AI and worried that it's going to take their jobs and also diminish creativity. Where are we now, in your view?
I think we have a saying that it will start with a human and end with a human. However, saying that, we are in a key moment of a very boring, non-creative word, of efficiency. So when it comes to the production side of it, there is no denying that we are bang in the middle of a whole load of software and new concepts and new AI that is going to make everything more efficient, which will hopefully make us not just cost efficient, but time efficient, like save on overtime, save on all those things. It's kind of exciting. And I think, yes, jobs will change, but if you're looking to the future and where that sits, I think it just means actually there's going to be a different skill set that is needed. So whilst some jobs will change, I don't think necessarily jobs will go. I think they'll become different. So if you're going to sort of getting into the industry now, for example, it'd be like, what do I need to do? It's like, well, you need to know how to use pretty much every version of AI that knows, because we all need to educate ourselves, we need to train, we need to be using it more and more, and I think that's what the new generation will bring in. So it's seeing there is opportunity and there's expanse in it. Is it the most creative thing in the world? Yes and no. Will it make us way more efficient and make us produce things quicker and better? Yes.
Is that how you see it, Kate? I mean, I know the BBC is doing a lot of work around AI, but can it help with scheduling? Can it help with editing, production?
I mean, not planning to use it in scheduling. So I think we've got an amazing scheduling team, and I defy any AI program to be better than our schedulers, quite frankly. But we are certainly looking very carefully at AI. We're piloting various schemes. We're doing training to all staff about it. And like Amelia said, I think there probably are benefits in terms of speeding up the production process, also how we curate content for the viewer at home. So yes, huge benefits to AI, but just using it responsibly and being very transparent when we use it as well, I think is key.
Yeah. And just before we do take some questions, I'm going to ask each of you, who or what is going to be the surprise winner in 2025? Josh, what's your thought on that? Everyone, it's so unfair to go to you first. Everyone else's brains is whirring at this point, going,
I mean, women's sport, I would say. So,
Netflix is it Netflix that's getting it live?
No, well, I'm thinking about the Euros and the Rugby World Cup, which I think Euros is BBC and ITV. Yeah. And I think the Rugby World Cup, the Women's Euros has grown and grown and grown over and I think if England do well, the numbers are crazy when you see them go up as they go through they're similar to men's football numbers. So that's really exciting, and I think that's going to mean that every summer sport will hit big numbers because you've got men's, women's. So that's what I think will be the big one.
Kiran?
I would say it's producers who can crack lower tariff drama. We all know the challenges around funding drama productions at the moment, and equally we know from a broadcaster's perspective and a streamer's perspective that drama is key to our streaming success. And so I think about an example that we've got on air at the moment called Patience, which is made by Eagle Eye. It's a low tariff drama. It's doing really well on linear. It's doing really well on streaming. But other indies like Rough Cut, Clapperboard have been making lower tariff dramas. And I think it's just I think that could be a really good growth area.
Chris, surprise winners. I'm assuming you're not going to say Bond fans and Barbara Broccoli and Amazon Prime and MGM getting together and sorting out a new Bond movie.
I'm so sorry, I have no new news I can share with you on that. I do think this year, I'm very excited. I think this year will be a great year for new and emerging talent on television, particularly those from social media and YouTube backgrounds. I think we talked a little bit about how YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, etc. are creating a new generation of talent for their networks. I think you'll see many more of those transition to big TV and streaming, and I think very successfully so, and hopefully bringing those audiences that are consuming that content in those environments to our TV services.
Amelia?
I think it's going to be the year of more of live. I think there's going to be, I don't know what it is, which sounds like a cop-out, but there's going to be a live event that's going to surprise us all, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And Kate, last of all you, I'm assuming Greg Wallace isn't going to be a winner.
What?
Sorry, that was tough.
I mean, I think it is probably, it's the viewers, it's the audience who are the winners, because I just think we have never had a better time in terms of the excellence and the variety of the content out there. And I think because there's so much variety, all of us having to raise our game all the time in terms of what we're commissioning, what everyone's producing. And so I think there's never been a greater abundance of choice available for all the viewers out there. And they are watching, they are still watching.
Well, that is a positive. Lots of positives through that as well. And now we're going to turn to questions. And we've got a few, so I'll rattle through them. But, I mean, let's take this one first. Are there any obvious trends? This is from Lindsay Clay from Thinkbox. Are there any obvious trends in viewing as a response to the state of the world? They've put in brackets, I'm hoping for less dystopia and conspiracy and more stuff to make me feel better. Chess. Might make Lindsay feel better. Anything aside from chess?
Well, there's always been, I think, that trend. Look at the wider economy. I mean, in the sort of early 2000s, when sort of Britain was booming and it was New Labour, we had quite, Big Brother, Weakest Link, quite brutal formats. 2008, there was a worldwide economic crash, and in the UK, that's when Bake Off came in on the BBC sort of comfort viewing. So I am very conscious of that. I think you do have to look at what's happening in the world at the moment. I think going back to Amelia's point, that was a really good one about people do feel at the moment they want to connect and come together more and be part of the conversation and not miss out on those shows. So I think there's a lot of disruption going on in the world at the moment, from climate change to political change, and I think actually people just want great fun escapist shows that they can enjoy, and I think people want more of that.
Kiran, do you agree?
I do agree actually about that sort of warm bath programming that people reach for in difficult times. I was just reflecting on when we launched our first series of The Piano. It was in February, it was cold, it was dark, it was miserable. And actually all the audience response was that this is exactly the kind of show we need, as you say, Kate, to sort of escape the tough times. But it is, again, just echoing what Kate said, it is about that shared experience. People want to talk about things, people want to feel like they're connected. Actually, when the world feels like it's topsy-turvy, that's when you reach for things that feel comforting and familiar.
And you're going to offer that?
try alongside the risky, innovative and different.
Okay, just checking. This is a good one. How can independent producers navigate the evolving landscape of streaming services to secure fair deals, particularly in terms of ancillary rights, given the competitive offers from platforms like Apple TV and the challenges posed by other services such as Prime and Channel 4? Let's hear from a Prime perspective first, in terms of how independent producers navigate that.
I would say just come and talk to us. Come and listen to some of our flexible ways of working. I think we tend to find a way through it. And if you've got a particular idea but it's constrained by some area of rights, then let's have a conversation and try and find a way through it.
And Amelia, what conversations do you have? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think more so now, probably not a couple of years ago, but now it is generally every conversation, every deal is open to be a deal and be negotiated and talked through. There's, we are, as we said at the beginning of this, we're super lucky in the UK still. There's still huge opportunities to hold on to a lot of things that other people globally don't. It doesn't even begin that conversation as a closed door. And because now we're in a world where there's multiple partners, there's multiple different ways of funding things, there's multiple, you're getting bits from him, so yes, conversations can definitely be had. You've just got to be brave and have the conversations. Don't necessarily take the first draft as the only option, that's for sure.
And is it easier to have those conversations from a position, a big indie like yours, or a big company like yours? Is it easier to have those conversations? You already have the links, you already have...
I think that becomes dependent on the people that you have at your company. I think if you've got, people who are really good at your jobs, you've got excellent, like we are very lucky, excellent business affairs people, and so have a broad understanding from their experience. They sort of know where things lie. But again, we do find that most commissioners or most buyers are at least happy to have the conversations and sort of, try and work through it. But yes, is it easier for us because we come from a bigger place? I would expect probably yes.
Yeah. Josh, this is one more than touching on advertising. With the increasing shift towards digital revenues, how can media companies effectively target ads and engage users, considering the challenges posed by ad blockers, shared accounts, and the consumption of content on unofficial sites?
I mean, the ad blockers are ad blockers, so if someone's got an ad blocker on the phone, you can't advertise to them, so there's nothing you can do about that.
Addressability doesn't get you anywhere with that, does it?
It doesn't, no. Because that would be annoying. And we don't want to annoy users. We want, we want to be putting the right stuff in front of people. But what was the first part of the question?
How can media companies effectively target ads and engage users, considering the challenges posed by ad blockers, but also shared accounts and the consumption of content on unofficial sites? I suppose, does that mean on unofficial sites where you won't see the advertising? I suppose if you're somewhere where you can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is what we're most interested in is serving advertising in brand safe environments, quality environments, and serving relevant stuff to the right people. And that, for me, I think as the world's becoming more addressable, the TV world's becoming more addressable, there's not really a better place to serve advertising. So that's why I feel very positive about TV as an environment for advertising moving forward. And I think that's why, and this isn't, I'm not saying this is going to create problems for digital media owners, but I think that some money will come back into TV from digital media companies as a result of us being able to do all of the addressable targeting that we haven't been able to do in past years with TV.
Okay. This one is specifically for you, Kate Phillips. Jane Featherston recently said the BBC has multiple drama shows it can't fund due to US co-production money dropping out of the market. Is premium unscripted experiencing the same problem?
No, I mean, I'm very aware of the sort of challenges in the drama market at the moment, but I think, Lindsay Salt and Charlotte Moore together, I think have done a brilliant job of still bringing great dramas to our screens, and Sue Deeks, who runs acquisitions, is brilliant as well. In Unscripted, we certainly are looking at new partnerships and new ways to fund. So, we've done a partnership with NBC because then we have it exclusively in the UK, they have the US, but you know, indies still retain their rights. So we're certainly looking more at that, and looking at other, so UK TV, which of course the BBC owns, they have some really good content on UK TV that we've brought over to our channels as a second window, like Unforgivable and Murder They Hope. So I think in terms of getting better value for money in terms of what we're spending, that is really important. And we're not expecting the indies to do all the work on that. So, you know, we will, it's great for the indies when we can give second windows to some of their shows and get them an even bigger audience. And then I think we're very open to partnerships, but we're not as reliant on it as dramas at the moment. We still can fully fund programmes, but in terms of upping the ambition of them and what we want to do in those big impact programmes, we certainly are open to partnerships if they sort of work for the UK audience, and they absolutely have to work for the indie as well.
Now, the problem, just to be clear, the problems are worse with drama because it's so much more expensive.
Yeah.
Funds
You know, I
raised have to be
mean,
much
drama is, we've just seen, I mean, the level, the expectation the audience have for drama now, it's so, I mean, I don't know, I hear these things like Day of the Jackal costs 10 million an ep, I don't know if that's true, but, you know, they're eye-watering amounts that we're hearing. But I think, like you were saying,
and it's been recommissioned,
I think actually you can still do dramas on healthy budgets as well. You know, it's not, there's a lot of dramas that are really punching in terms of the impact they make and the cost of them.
We've sort of touched on this a bit, but with creators and influencers driving higher revenue than traditional broadcasting, how is the industry adapting to collaborate with them effectively while maintaining creative integrity? Who wants to answer that one? Kiran.
That's a really challenging one to answer. I mean, I think, you know, we are always looking at trying to do things differently. We're really aware of how the landscape is changing. And we just have to look at new ways of working with new talent. You know, one of the things that we're really sort of focused on at Channel 4 is how we work with new talent, how we work with, how we work to get younger viewers as well. We're sort of looking, we're following younger viewers to where younger viewers are consuming content. I'm probably not answering the question, but we're basically looking at what's going on in the market and making sure that we are being reactive and following audiences and talent to where they can be found.
Amelia, have you worked with, presumably you've worked at Fremantle with creators and influencers to make shows, have you?
Yeah, and I think it's about also working out what both parties can bring to the table, because we could also bring a lot, as well as the creator bring out, to Chris's earlier point. You know, I think there'll be a lot more of creators coming into the sort of the traditional TV model, so to speak, and vice versa, because there's also, it's expanded, it's huge, they do brilliant jobs, but at the same time there's a world that we can do in terms of some of the boring stuff like the compliance, the making sure everybody's doing things properly, etc. That's coming, I think, quickly up behind us and things like that. So it's like, what can we bring? And that's how we look at it when we approach creators, and it's an area that we're really focusing on. But it's like, hi, we're really good at loads of stuff and you're really good at loads of stuff. Let's see where we can fill those holes and hopefully create something brilliant that again feeds a bigger audience, and what that partnership might look like. So it's sort of, realising that both parties can help each other, I think.
I should just add, because Sasha Kari, who's our head of digital commissioning, will never forgive me if I didn't mention Channel 4.0, which is our YouTube channel, which is obviously really foregrounding creators and influencers and new talent.
We got a question from Carlo here, who's a student in Bristol. I'm wondering if there's any indication of a future for commissions where viewers can interact with the narrative. Now, we've seen this with Black Mirror in the past and book publishers recently adopting the same strategy. Are people commissioning that? Is that something you're going to go for on Amazon Prime?
Is that happening on EastEnders?
Yeah.
Is that they're doing a
I don't know.
40th anniversary customer audience voting mechanism. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a priority at the moment, but I think it is an interesting area, and it's certainly one that I think BBC would always be open to experimenting in. But it's not on my radar at the moment.
Well, if it's not on your radar, it's not on our radar. I'm afraid that is it. Thank you so much to you all. You can now go and have a drink, or a non-alcoholic drink, whatever you like. Thank you all so much. I hope it's been illuminating. It's certainly been very interesting from my perspective. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks to everybody who arranged it.